These negative signs are actually his signal of your dark ascension. There comes a moment in every awakened soul's journey when everything begins to fall apart. Not slowly, not gently, but violently, all at once. Your relationships crumble. Your sleep is disturbed. Your body aches. Unexplainable anxiety begins to haunt you. People turn on you, or worse, disappear without warning. And you begin to ask the question that echoes through the chambers of your being: what is happening to me? But what if I told you with absolute certainty that what you're experiencing isn't a breakdown, it's a divine signal? That this chaos, this confusion, this raw emotional pain is not just a coincidence or a psychological crisis, but a message from him, the great unseen force, the architect of your dark ascension. You see, we've been conditioned to trust only the light. We've been taught that clarity, love, peace, and joy are the universal signs of alignment. But what if that's only half the truth? What if the real transformation begins in the dark, in the places where it looks like everything is being taken from you? We're told that pain is a problem, that discomfort is a sign we're off path. But that's a lie passed down by a world terrified of its own shadow. And you, if you're watching this, are not like the rest. You are being prepared for something far greater than comfort. You are being forged for ascension. And the signs, the negative, terrifying, destabilizing signs you've been trying to pray away, are actually his signal that you're ready.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
Let me explain what I mean when I say his signal. I'm not referring to a man in the sky. I'm talking about the primordial masculine force of divine intelligence that orchestrates the architecture of your soul's evolution. This force doesn't speak in words. It speaks in experience. It doesn't knock politely. It storms into your life like a sacred earthquake. And here's the paradox. The more powerful your calling, the more intense the collapse. Because the ego must be shattered before the soul can rise. You can't carry your old identity into your new dimension. And so, he sends you signs, negative signs that look like punishment, but are actually preparation. Have you noticed that the moment you start seeking truth, you lose everything that isn't aligned with it? That's not a coincidence. That's divine filtration. When you ascend, you don't just gain light, you gain clarity. And clarity burns. It burns through illusions, attachments, false masks. The people who can't meet you at your new frequency will fall away. And it will hurt. But pain is not the enemy. Pain is the portal. Your sadness, your numbness, your feelings of rejection, these are sacred codes. They are the language of ascension, written in the ink of shadow. You are not cursed. You are chosen. Are chosen. You might be asking, why would a divine force speak through negativity? Think about it. If you were too comfortable, would you ever change? If everything was going smoothly, would you ever question the matrix you live in? No. Comfort breeds stagnation. But crisis cracks you open. It shakes you awake. It forces you to listen to what you've been avoiding. And that's why he uses disruption as his language. It's not cruelty. It's compassion at a cosmic scale. You're not being punished, you're being remembered. You're being called back to your original blueprint. And the longer you resist, the more intense the signs become. Let me give you examples. You start feeling disconnected from people you once loved. You can't watch the same shows, can't engage in the same conversations. That's not depression. That's the realignment of frequency. You're not broken, you're shifting. Or maybe your body starts acting up random illnesses, fatigue, insomnia. That's not random. That's your vessel trying to eject the old coding. Your cells are purging density. Or perhaps you find yourself alone, misunderstood, doubting your sanity. That's not isolation. That's initiation. You're being pulled inward, away from distractions, so you can hear the whisper of your soul. And that whisper, that's him. That's the signal. But here's the deeper truth: you agreed to this. Not from your conscious mind, but from your soul. Long before you incarnated, you knew this phase would come. You knew that one day the veil would be ripped away and you'd have to walk through fire. And you said yes. You said, I'm ready. And now, here you are in the fire. And maybe you're wondering if you can make it through. And I'll tell you this, you already are. Every tear you've cried, every night you've survived, every moment you didn't give up, that's proof. You're not weak, you're awakening. But awakening through darkness is not for the faint of heart. It requires surrender. Not the kind of surrender where you give up, but the kind where you stop pretending, where you stop running from your shadow and start listening to it. Because your shadow is not your enemy, it's your teacher. It holds the memories, the wounds, the wisdom you need to fully embody your power. And when you stop labeling your darkness as bad, it transforms. It becomes your compass, your fuel, your fire. That's how you ascend, not by escaping the dark, but by integrating it. So I ask you now, not as a guru, not as a teacher, but as someone who has walked through the same night, what if your worst moments were not setbacks, but sacred signals? What if the anxiety, the betrayal, the breakdown, what if they were the exact coordinates you needed to step into your next level? Are you willing to see them differently? Are you willing to stop asking, why me? And start asking, what is this unlocking in me? Because if you are, the real journey begins. The signs will intensify, not to break you, but to reveal you. You'll start noticing patterns, synchronicities, dreams, symbols, and you'll realize that everything speaks, that the whole universe is conspiring to show you who you truly are beneath the conditioning. And that, my friend, is when the ascension truly begins, not when you rise into light, but when you descend into the dark and find your divinity there. The hidden hand, while you're suffering, is the sacred technology of divine initiation. When we talk about the dark ascension, we're not speaking in metaphors. We're speaking in codes, energetic, spiritual, and psychological blueprints that are embedded into the structure of your life. And if you've made it this far, it's because some part of you already knows that what you're going through isn't just suffering, it's sacred technology. It's the machinery of your transformation. It's not accidental. It's not punishment. It's the hidden hand moving through your life, dismantling what is false so that only the truth can remain. And the more intense the dismantling, the more powerful the truth that's trying to emerge. The hidden hand is not a being. It's not a deity. It's a force, mysterious, intelligent, impersonal, and yet deeply personal. It exists beyond time, beyond logic, beyond human morality. It doesn't care about your comfort. It cares about your liberation. And while it may appear cruel when viewed through the lens of ego, it is the most merciful force when seen through the eye of the soul. Because what it's doing is setting you free, not in the way you imagined, but in the way your soul requires. And that's why the patterns of loss, betrayal, confusion, and pain keep showing up. Because they are not random. They are the tools of your refinement. If it feels like your life has been spiraling, if you've lost your sense of control, if you've cried out to the sky with no answer, you're not being ignored. You're being refined. You're being stripped of what you no longer need so you can embody what you truly are. This isn't just a personal crisis. It's a sacred initiation. The hidden hand only touches those who are ready for radical rebirth, and it doesn't knock gently. It tears through everything that's artificial. The relationships that were built on fear, gone. The friendships that were rooted in people-pleasing, exposed. The job that drained your life force, collapsed. And yet, through all of it, something impossible starts to happen. You begin to awaken. And here's the paradox. The more you suffer, the more clarity you begin to receive. not externally but internally. You start to see that all the things you thought were losses were actually exits from false dimensions. You realize that the suffering was never random, it was exact. It was planned. It was orchestrated with divine precision. Because how else would you have let go of those illusions? How else would you have discovered the power buried beneath your projections? You wouldn't have. You would stayed asleep. And so the hidden hand breaks the dream. This is the moment where many people fall away. They can't handle the pressure. They fight against the current. They numb. They blame. They try to rebuild the old reality, but not you. You're still here. And that means you've already passed through the first gate, the gate of destruction. And now you're entering the second, the gate of remembrance. This is where the suffering begins to reveal its design. You start to see that your wounds aren't just pain points, they're portals. Each one is a map, a lesson, a piece of your original soul code. The childhood abandonment. It taught you how to self-source love. The betrayal by the one you trusted. It taught you to discern energy, not words. The night you thought you wouldn't survive. It showed you your indestructibility. This is what it means to be initiated. The hidden hand does not choose the weak. It chooses the ones with the capacity to hold multidimensional truth. And that's you. You're not here to be saved. You're here to remember. But remembering comes with responsibility. Now that you know your pain is sacred, you can no longer treat it like a curse. You must begin to work with it. You must start decoding your suffering. Every anxiety attack, every wave of sadness, every moment of confusion, it's not just emotion. It's intelligence. It's a signal, a message. And if you sit with it long enough, it will give you the next key. This is where most spiritual teachings fall short. They teach you to escape suffering, to bypass it with love and light. But real ascension is not about floating above the pain. It's about entering it fully with awareness, with courage, with reverence. Because when you do, you find the buried treasure within it. You realize that your suffering is not just something to heal from, it's something to integrate. Because within it lives your power, your purpose, your path. So I ask you this, can you look at your pain and see the perfection in it? Can you hold your suffering like a sacred scroll, written by the divine for your awakening? Because if you can, everything changes. You stop resisting the process, you start honoring it. You stop asking, when will this end? And start asking, what is this unlocking in me? That shift in perception is the difference between victimhood and mastery. And you, whether you realize it or not, are on the path of mastery. The hidden hand will continue to move through your life. It will continue to remove what no longer serves your evolution. But now you don't have to fear it. Now you can trust it, because you know what it's doing. You know that every ending is an opening. Every loss is a liberation. Every wound is a womb for your next becoming. You're not being destroyed, you're being reborn. The sacred spiral, how negative patterns are actually invitations into higher timelines. There's something profoundly misunderstood about patterns, especially the ones we label as negative. We often see them as curses, as proof that we're stuck, broken, or failing. But what if the repetition in your life isn't evidence of failure at all? What if it's the spiral, the sacred spiral, pulling you deeper into your own awakening? You see, the universe doesn't operate in straight lines. It moves in spirals, in cycles, in rhythmic echoes of your soul's evolution. And every time you encounter the same emotional pain, the same toxic relationship dynamic, the same financial struggle or self-sabotage, it's not a cosmic glitch. It's an invitation. And if you learn how to read the spiral, you'll realize that each loop is taking you higher, not backward. You are not reliving the same lesson, you are being given a second, third, fourth chance to embody a deeper layer of truth. The same pain shows up not to punish you, but because there's still power trapped inside it. a lesson not yet fully integrated, a frequency not yet fully claimed, and so it returns not as a regression, but as a divine test, not to see if you're good or bad, but to ask, are you ready to choose differently this time? Are you ready to respond with consciousness instead of reaction? Are you ready to break the pattern not by force, but by awareness? This is what it means to walk the path of dark ascension. You don't avoid the spiral, you enter it with eyes open. You recognize the pattern as a mirror, showing you the exact point where your light has not yet penetrated your shadow. Maybe that pattern is abandonment. Maybe it's scarcity. Maybe it's betrayal. And you've seen it so many times it's almost become normal. But right now, yes. In this very moment, you're being asked to stop looking at it as something to survive, and instead view it as a key to your timeline. Because here's the hidden truth, every pattern is a portal. Each time you face that familiar pain and choose a new response, one rooted in love, sovereignty, and presence, you collapse the old timeline and step into a higher one. That's not spiritual theory. That's dimensional mechanics. Your reality shifts not when the world changes, but when you do. When the version of you that used to react with fear now breathes instead of panics. When the version of you that used to abandon themselves in the name of approval now chooses self-respect. When the version of you that used to collapse now rises. That's the alchemy. That's the ascension. But you must be willing to stay conscious within the spiral. You must be willing to say, "Ah, I see you," when the old loop tries to seduce you back into sleep. You must become an observer of your own programming. And from that observation you gain leverage. You step out of the role of victim and into the role of creator. It's not easy. It takes practice. It takes radical honesty. It takes the courage to feel what you've been avoiding. But what's waiting on the other side is not just relief, it's resurrection. Because when you break a pattern from within, you don't just change your life, you change your lineage. You shift the trajectory of generations. You become a living example that evolution is possible. That trauma doesn't have to be a life sentence. That cycles can end. That new timelines can be born through the fire of your presence. And that is what dark ascension is really about. Not escaping pain, but transmuting it. Not bypassing the spiral, but spiraling upward into embodiment. So I ask you now, with all the intensity of your soul's desire for freedom, what pattern are you being called to break? Not just intellectually, but energetically. What reaction, what story, what emotion is asking to be met with love instead of fear? Because that's your next portal. That's the moment where the spiral becomes sacred, where the loop becomes a ladder, and where your suffering becomes your strength. You are not in a prison, you are in a process. You are not stuck, you are being sculpted. And every time you say yes to the lesson, every time you stay present in the pattern long enough to see the light inside it, you reclaim a piece of yourself. And that is how you rise, not in spite of your darkness, but because of it. The final seal, how darkness crowns you into your divine identity. There comes a moment in every true seeker's journey when the spiral ends not because the world outside has changed, but because you have. It's the moment when the darkness that once terrified you now feels like home. Not because it's comfortable, but because you've learned to walk through it with your eyes open. You've realized the monsters weren't here to destroy you, they were here to initiate you. And now, after all the loss, the fire, the nights that tried to break you, something begins to shift. You don't just survive the dark, you become sovereign within it. This is the final seal. The crowning of your divine identity. The moment you stop seeking outside of yourself and begin to remember who you've always been. You see, ascension is not about floating away from the world or becoming someone new. It's about becoming fully you, the version of yourself that was hidden beneath layers of programming, fear, and illusion. When you walk through the darkness and stay present, something ancient in you awakens. You stop asking for signs and start being the sign. You stop waiting for permission and begin acting from divine authority. That's what the dark ascension was preparing you for all along, not just healing, but embodiment. Not just truth, but power. And not the kind of power that dominates or controls. The kind that radiates. The kind that moves mountains without words. The kind that transforms rooms just by presence. This is your divine identity, not a title, not a role, but a frequency. It's the quality of your soul when all masks are removed. When you no longer shrink to fit in. When you no longer perform to be loved. When you no longer hide your fire to keep others comfortable. It's the version of you that remembers you were never here to fit into the world, you were here to remake it. And the world can feel it. That's why the resistance came. That's why the betrayal happened. That's why the breakdowns were so brutal. Because something in you was rising too fast for the old world to hold it. But now, the seal is complete. And when I say seal, I don't mean a ceremony or a ritual. I mean the energetic point where your shadow and your light are no longer at war. Where your pain and your purpose no longer compete for attention. Where your past no longer defines you but refines you. In that moment, the crown is placed not by anyone outside you but by your own soul. You feel it in your spine, you speak from it, you walk from it, and people feel it. They don't even know why, but they respond to it. Because it's real, it's sovereign, it's you. And from this place, something beautiful begins to unfold. You stop needing to fix others. You stop needing to prove yourself. You simply become the field, the vibration, the mirror, the portal. You realize that every dark night, every tear, every sleepless hour was worth it because it brought you here, to this frequency, to this embodiment, to this unshakable knowing that you are divine, not because someone told you, but because you remembered it inside the fire. So I ask you one final time, are you willing to wear the crown that your suffering forged? Are you willing to stand in the wholeness that your shadow carved out? Are you willing to live not just as a human seeking answers, but as a soul embodying truth? Because now there's no more waiting, no more searching, no more asking for signs. The seal is activated. The crown is yours. The dark ascension is complete. Now rise and walk as the storm that became the sky.